Hello and welcome to another Learn Scratch tutorial, and today we're going to show you how to make a Scratch adventure game. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to get Scratch the cat walking around the screen, and we'll display some text in the background, and as Scratch walks along it moves from scene to scene, and as you can see there above we've got some sort of animation going on there with some AI, a little bit of a plane flying over the top. And we can go and talk to people. So there you go, there's someone talking to Scratch, says hello. Ask my name, let's put Bob, why not? There you go. And it remembers who your name is. And you can talk to people. And what else have we got? Oh, and we can do objects in the game as well. So there you go, like we pick up some bananas. And our bananas have appeared in our inventory up in the top right corner there, which is great. And depending on what scene you're on, it can say different things, which you can see there. I think my plane's probably still flying across. And if you go back to the start, the beginning text has gone. Perfect. Okie dokie. So, let's get started. Let's go to Scratch. And we'll click Create. Brilliant. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to get Scratch walking about the scene. We can make him walk right, left, and if you noticed he changes direction when he walks right and left. So nice and easy. First thing we do is we say when the start button's clicked, let's get a loop going, a forever loop, so we can check. You'll have seen this in previous tutorials. And we're going to need two lots of if at the very least. Let's have a look. There we go. Scratch's costume, he's got two costumes, good stuff. So, what have we got? If press right, let's have a look. Oh no, not touching mouse, where's that? If key right's pressed, there we go. So, if the right arrow is pressed, then what's going to happen is he's going to move to the right. And same thing with the left hand side. So, that's good. So, the first bit, there we are. If right arrow is pressed, then change it by 10, which is good. Now he should, if I press start, there you go, it should go to the right. And we could duplicate that, and we'll do a left arrow. And this time we'll do it by -10, -10. Each time we're changing the x coordinates, which if you look here, the x is how far across it goes, x is across. So that should be fine. Let's have a look, let's press start. So right arrow goes right, left arrow it goes left. Good. Perfect. Good start. Now, what we could do, if we just wanted to walk in one direction, we could use the next costume for that. Just put the next costume on both, and it would walk left and right, which is okay. That's cool if you like that. That's fine. But I'd also like my Scratch to change direction, which means that we can't just use the next coordinate. What we're going to have to do is be a little bit more clever. And how's it going to work? Well, this time, in order to get him to change left and right, we can't just have two costumes. There we are. We need to have 4 costumes, because we're going to have one there, and then we'll duplicate that one, and then we'll duplicate that one. So we've now got 4 costumes, but for costumes 3 and 4, we're just going to have to flip them. There we go. Good. So you got costumes 3 and 4, rotate between those when he's walking left, and costumes 1 and 2 for when he's walking right. Good, perfect. But how do we code that? Well, this time round, we can't just move next costume, because if we did next costume, watch what happens. We do right, hey, it's going a little bit crazy, so that's no good. What we need to do is we need to change the costume depending on what direction it's going and which costume it is already. So what we do now is we put another if statement in there, but this time we're using if else. And what we say is, so if he's moving right, if the costume, let's have a look, we need to get the costume number, there you go. So this time moving right, if his costume is on costume 1 already, we switch to number 2, otherwise we switch to number 1. So let's have a go at that one. So if the costume number equals, if I would do it this way around, number 1. So if the costume number is number 1, then we change to costume number 2. Otherwise, we switch to costume number 1. There we go. And we'll put that inside of the right-hand if statement. Notice that's in the if statement, not after it. There we go. So what we say is if the right arrow is pressed, then we move across, but also then if the costume is number 1, we'll switch to number 2, otherwise we switch to number 1. Let's move Scratch back, let's try that. There he is, good, he walks right, perfect. And let's just duplicate that, change that to if the costume equals 3, then we'll set the costume to 4, otherwise set the costume to 3. And this one can go inside of the left arrow if statement, just underneath change X. So now, there we go, he walks left and he walks right, which is good. He's walking left, he's walking right. There's a little bit of, he's walking a little bit too fast there. As you can see, he's going a little bit too fast in terms of his costume changes. So what we'll do there is we'll put a little bit of a weight just after it here. Do 0.1. You can experiment with this and also experiment with how far he moves with the X coordinate. There you go. That's looking a bit better there. Let's put that as 0.07 maybe. Let's try that. Let's have a look. Is that any better? Perhaps still a little bit slow. 0.02 maybe. There we go. That's getting a little bit better. 0.045. 0.05. Again, you'll have to experiment this to make it work however you want it. If you want Scratch to move faster each time when he's walking, just change the X values. Let's try those to 15 and then minus 15. Just get them to the values which you like. There you go. That's about right, isn't it? That's not too bad. There you go. So we got Scratch walking left and right. Good. Good start. Okay, so now it's about time that we start to put a few backdrops in. Let's have a look. Let's add our first backdrop. I'm just going to use some random backdrops today. You might want to think a bit more carefully about which backdrops you're going to use from Scratch, or even better, design your own backdrops. But for today, I'll just have these ones. Here we go. 1, 2, that's okay. And add some more backdrops. Add a beach. Let's put the beach. There we go. Good. So for my Scratch, let's have a look. Start off in the city area, so on a wall. Then we can go to the boardwalk, and then we can go down to the beach. That's okay. And maybe get to go for a swim. Let's have a look. Is there a sea somewhere? Let's have a look. Sea. Underwater. There we go. Underwater. Let's try that one. That'll do. There we go. There you go. So we can start off there. Then he can walk down to the boardwalk, down onto the beach, and then finally go into the sea to see what's happening in the sea. That's cool. Good. Excellent. So how are we going to change between each of these backdrops? Well, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to keep track of which backdrop we are on. So which backdrop number we are on. So if you look here, there's a number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and we could just switch to that backdrop number depending on which whereabouts we are in the game. So how are we going to do that? Well, first of all, we're going to need a variable. And let's call this, let's call this scene. What scene we're on? There we go. You could call it a scene or area, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to call it a scene. Good. And at the start of the game, we're going to set the scene to scene number 1. There we go. So we're in the first scene, which is great. And that's okay. That's good stuff. And we're going to use a broadcast, and we're going to say change scene. You're going to see why in a minute. Change scene. There we go. So we're going to broadcast set change scene. So at the start of the game, we set the scene to 1, then we broadcast change scene. Now, when I receive change scene, there we go. The first time we do this, we have backdrop change scene. What we're going to do is we're going to change the scene to the correct backdrop number. So there's the change scene. There we go. switch backdrop to, done this slightly wrong. What we'll have to do instead is rename these scenes. We'll have to give them the correct number because it's not letting me set it to the scene number. So let's just go there. And I'm going to rename these to scene 1, 2, 3, and 4. Good. And the reason we're doing that is because now we can say set the backdrop to and drag the scene variable in there. There we go. So now what's going to happen when we press start, it's going to set the scene to number 1. It's going to broadcast change the scene, and then when it receives change the scene, which will be at the start straight away, it's going to switch the backdrop to whatever that scene number is. So hopefully if I press start, it should change. There you go. Changes to the first backdrop. Perfect. Good. So, and you can see it's there on scene 1. So how do we change scene if we're walking along? Let's say if we're walking left or walking right. Well, the easiest way to do this, and we might want to look at a more complicated version later, is you just say, when we get over to this right hand side of the screen here, what we do is we increase the scene by 1, move Scratch back over to the left so it looks like he's started on the next scene, and then broadcast that change scene, which will then change the backdrop to match the scene number. So let's have a look. Here we go. What we'll do here, we'll just put another if statement and put it down here. So what we can say is if, where are we at? If our Y position is greater than, where do we want it? Well, let's have a look. Watch this Y coordinate here. Oh, not Y position. What am I talking about? That's up and down. X position, sorry. X is across. I'm going a bit crazy. So, X position. If our X position is, just watch the X here, about 230. If we say it's greater than 230, if our X position is greater than 230, what we do is we set our X position right back over to the left hand side. Let's set it to minus 229. There we go. And change the scene by 1. That's okay. And so set the scene to set this there, change the scene by 1, and then we broadcast change scene. There we go. So why don't we set it? I mean, we've set it here to say 230. Why don't we set it to minus 230? Well, the reason being is that obviously we're going to have another one here, minus 230, greater than the X position. So we're going to have the same sort of thing over on the left hand side, but we're going to swap it over the other way, change the scene by minus 1. If we had it 230 and then minus 230, it would of course just keep moving round. Oh no, it wouldn't, because it's got to be greater than. Well, can we get away saying minus 230? Let's see if it works. That should work actually. Now I've come to think it, because it's greater than, not greater than equals. That should actually work. Let's have a look. Scene 1. Yeah. Scene 2. Let's go back to scene 1. Scene 2. And you can see it here in the top corner that the scene keeps on changing because of this code here. Scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, scene 4. There we go. And you could just keep, if you want to keep doing that, if you want to add lots of scenes, all you've got to do is go onto your backdrops and keep adding more and more and more and more. Good. Now, what if he gets back to scene number 1? What do you want to happen if he gets down to 0, scene 0? Because if you notice here, what's actually happening is it moves on, changes onto scene 4 again. So we've got a problem here, so that if it goes down to 1, if he's on scene 1, we don't want him to move over. So what we can say here is we can say, if his X position is if his X position is less than 230, let's have a look. And what we can do here is we'll do an AND. There we go. If his X position is greater than 230 and the scene is not 1, because we don't want it to happen on scene 1. And the scene is not 1. There we go. So we can say here, if his X position is less than minus 230, and it's not on scene 1, then you can change the scene down. And we can do the same thing here for our maximum scene. So, scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, scene 4. Okay, so scene 4. Oops, where's he gone? Scene 4. So we can say the same thing for this one. So we'll just drag that out and duplicate it. Put you back there. Get rid of that one. And this time it's scene equals 4. So now, hopefully, if he's on scene 1, he won't go lower than scene 1. And if he's on scene 4, he won't go greater than scene 4. Let's find out, shall we? Scene 1. He moves across, he goes into scene 2, moves across, he goes into scene 3, 4. There you go. And now I can't walk further away. And we could try that as well. We can go back to scene 1. There we go. And he can't go less than scene 1. Perfect. Good. So there's the first part of our game. We've got Scratch walking around. So let's move on to the second part of the game. Let's say here on scene 2, I want a little bird flying around here on my scene. Our first artificial character, our first AI. So let's add a new sprite. Have we got a bird anywhere? Just got a bat. Might have to do a bat flying around. Let's have a look. A dove. Do 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 do. We'll have to have I think what we'll have to have here is we'll have a bat flying around for the moment. Have a look for a bird if you can find one, or make your own. There's our bat. Okay, and let's make it a bit smaller. Have a little bat. There he is, nice little bat flying around. So, what do we want to happen with the bat? Well, with the bat, we want to say at the start of the game, let's move him over to up here, into that top left-hand corner. So when start clicked, let's go to, where is it at? Go to, there you go. If you notice with the go to, whenever I move the bat to wherever I want him, the go to actually changes automatically. That's really useful. There we go. So at the start of the game, we go to there. And what we're going to do is we'll just get him to fly around in a nice zigzag sort of fashion. So like this, sort of down, then up, then back, and then up like that. So how are we going to do that? Well, it's nice and easy. First of all, he's put it inside of a forever loop because we want him to keep going all the way through the game whenever he's visible. And all we need to do is we're going to use the glide tool. The glide, there it is. So the first bit will glide to there. There we go. And each time I'm just dragging him, and every time I drag him, the glide changes. There we go. There. There we go. There. Just getting to glide. We're just getting to glide in a nice zigzag fashion. There we go. There we go. Okay, so let's see how that looks. Let's click start. There we go. Good stuff. And he sort of flies around a bit, There you go. Don't worry about the fact that he's flying around on the wrong scene at the moment. We're going to sort that in a second. But that looks good. That looks good. So how can we improve that? Well, first of all, what we can do is we can get him to start flapping his wings. He's got 2 costumes, so it wouldn't be a bad idea to get him to flap between the 2. So we can't put it in the same script here, because if we put change costume here, it's going to wait a second between each flap of the wing, which I don't think will look all that realistic. So let's create a new one, and let's just say forever, and let's say next costume. There we go. Next costume, good. There we are, next costume. That's okay. And then we'll get it to wait maybe 0.5 a second, maybe. Let's have a look, let's see if that works. There we go. There you go. It's flying around, good stuff. There you go, and he's flying forwards and backwards. Good. There you go. Now, some of you are probably saying, well, hang on a minute, he's flying left and he's flying right. You could, if you wanted, change the script here so that halfway through he starts flying back left again and changes direction. If you want to do that, then you could just use the similar technique to what we had here before. 4 costumes instead of 2. But this time you're probably going to want to create a variable called direction, or flying direction, and then if the direction equals right, then you go that way, and if the direction equals left, then you go that way. We could do that. In fact, why don't we have a go at that? Let's have a go at that now. So, on our bat here, let's first of all let's create 4 costumes instead of 2. So we'll duplicate costume 1, duplicate costume 2. There we go. So there you go. There's 1 and 2, and then 3 and 4. Let's flip those round so it's flying left. There you go. So we got 1, 2, and then when it turns the other way, 3 and 4. So what do we got to do here? Well, this is nice and easy. This time we make another variable, and this time only for this sprite, because we're only interested in whether this sprite's the only person that's interested, whether he's going left or right. And let's call this that direction. I thought I'd call it direction. There we go. There you go, direction. And what we'll do here is set the direction to right. And then halfway through, which would be, look for the X coordinate where it goes back down. That's where it changes. So we'll set the direction to left. There you go. So what we've got here is the direction it's facing is right, and then halfway through it changes it to left, which is good. And then what we can say here is we'll do a similar sort of thing. We won't do next costume. We'll do the if. There we go. And do another if. And we'll need an and. And what we can say here is no, that's not right. We need to do the same as before. An if statement for right, an if statement to left, and then another if statement with an else inside of each of them. There's one, good stuff. I should really have copied those. In fact, let's duplicate it, let's be lazy. So, if the direction is right, direction equals right. If the direction equals right, if I can spell, if the direction equals right, then if the costume number, I'm going right, aren't we? If the costume number is 1, then we change it to 2, otherwise we change it to 1. So, costume number, if the costume number equals 1, then we change it to 2, costume 2. Switch costume to B. There we go. Otherwise, switch the costume to A. There we go. And then we duplicate that. Oh no, duplicate the whole lot, that lot. And we put that below that one. So now we say if the direction equals left. And then if the costume equals 3, we switch it to 4. Otherwise, we switch it to 3. Now, hopefully, he flies right. He flies left, and then he changes direction, which he has done. Perfect, and he should change back to right again. Good, perfect, brilliant. Now, the problem we've got, of course, is we only want the bat to be flying on scene number 2. We don't want it to be flying on scene number 1 or 3 or 4 or anything else. So we need to incorporate that as well. So what we can say here is, which one should we put it? There we go. The easiest way to deal with this is at the start of this forever loop here, or that one, it doesn't really matter which one you do, you hide him, and then what you just say is if the scene is 2, if the scene equals 2, then we show. There we go. Hey, there we go. Let's see if that works. So, scene 1, nothing's happening. There we go. The bat is flying there. That's okay. And let's move our man across. There he is. So he's flying on scene number 2, but not number 1. Now if we move on to the next one. Oh no, that's no good. There you go. We got a glitch. The reason being is because I've put it on this one here. It goes all the way through this script, so it waits 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 seconds before we test whether it should show or hide again. So what we'll do here is, don't put it inside of that script, let's put it inside of this one. There we go. Or you could just create its own forever loop, it's a separate scene. Let's have a look. In fact, I'm going to do that. Let's have a look. Here we go. In fact, actually, that would be the easiest way to put it, wouldn't it? When I receive change scene, hide, if the scene number is 2, show. Let's have a go with that, shall we? Let's try that. Hey, look at that, perfect. Go back to number 1. There you go. Brilliant. That's a much better way of doing it. Good. And then move on to scene 3, and it hides again. Perfect. Okay, so we've got Scratch, we've got the bat. What should we do next? Well, what can we do next? We could do the same thing as we did before with the bat, but this time we'll do it with the title text. So this time, title text, so we're going to have to create our own new sprite. Good. And this one, let's just call it a Scratch Adventure. There we are, Scratch. Let's change the font to Scratch. There we go. Scratch. Oops. Actually, what I will do is, let's just undo that. We won't use bitmap mode, because with bitmaps, if I'll show you now, Scratch. This might work or it might not, but I think if you do with bitmaps, oh, we're okay at the moment. Sometimes with a bitmap, because of what a bitmap is and how they work, it can go a bit blurry when it makes it larger, but we're okay for the moment. That's doing it. There you go, Scratch, good stuff. Let's just undo that. Go back, thank you. So let's call it Scratch. And Adventure. There we go. Perfect. Scratch Adventure. And we'll just pull that down. Thank you. We're done now. Yep, we'll pull that down. A Scratch Adventure. There we go. And if you want to, you can click on. Let's just zoom in a bit more. Let's just stop that. And let's paint all the letters white. You could have done it white originally, but then you'd probably struggle to see it when you're doing it. There we go. A Scratch Adventure. There you go. Perfect. A Scratch Adventure. There we are. And when start clicked, let's just make it blur into the background a bit. Let's set the color effect, not the color effect, set the ghost effect to 25, maybe 23. Let's see if that works. There you go. So it looks, because I've done it like that, it sort of looks a little bit more like it's actual graffiti spray paint on the wall. You don't have to do that, but that's just what I've been doing. That's how I want to do it. So when start clicked, set the ghost effect to that. And we want to do the same sort of thing. When I receive change scene, we'll hide if the scene equals 1. If the scene equals 1, then we'll show. There we go. Let's have a look. There we go. Perfect. And if we walk to the next one, there you go. It appears or it hides depending on which scene. But if you remember back to the start of the tutorial, I showed it on the first screen here, but then as soon as I walked over here and came back, it had disappeared. How do we do that? Well, That's nice and easy. All we got to do is create another variable here, make a variable and call it title. That's title shown. Another variable called title shown because it's like the game title shown. Okay, for this sprite only, no one else is going to use that, so we're only concerned about this one. Let's have a look. At the start of the game, set that to false. Good stuff. If the scene equals 1, then we'll show, and we'll set the title to true. Good stuff. Good. And now what we can do is we can do a clever thing. We can put an and. There you go, title shown. And what we can say is if the scene equals 1 and the title shown equals false. Oh, yeah, that's right. That's okay. Good stuff. Then we'll show. So this time round, whenever it says shown, as soon as it shows it, it sets the title shown to true, which means that next time round it should work. Should we have a look? So we walk to the next one, walk back, and it's gone. Nice and easy. So again, you can start to see that we're using a lot of these variables here that only apply to the individual sprites, and that's a good idea. The reason being is that then, if you click on another sprite and you click on data, you can see that it isn't full of variables. If we start to build a big game, then if you kept them all as global variables, which appear everywhere, rather than just local variables that only appear in that sprite, you end up with a massive list of variables, and things could go quite badly wrong. So it just keeps it nice and tidy. There we go. Okay, so we got Scratch here, and he walks from scene to scene. Now what we're going to do is let's do a similar thing, but this time we'll have Abby. And Abby, we'll just turn Abby the other way. There we go. Abby, you're going to face left. There we are. Good. And Abby, we're going to have Abby appear on scene 3. So, good stuff. Oh, we don't need that when start shown. So, when I receive change scene, if the scene equals, oops, let's just change that, looks hide. If the scene equals scene 3, then we can show Abby. Let's have a look. Good stuff. Show. Good. And we'll just move her over there. What's going to happen is we're going to say, okay, we're going to show Abby, and then what we're going to do is she's going to wait until she's touching Scratch, and then she's going to talk to him. So wait until touching Scratch. What's Scratch called? Sprite 1. Wait until touching Sprite 1. And when she touches Sprite 1, well, what we're going to do is we're going to say hello. And then we're going to get to ask him his name. So ask, what's your name? And then when he answers, set. Oh, need a new variable. Let's call it player name. Player name. Good. Set the player name to whatever the answer is. There we are. Set the player name to whatever the answer is, and we might as well say nice to meet you, whatever your player name is. Now, if you wanted to say nice to meet you and play whatever their player name is at the same time, it's two pieces of information there. You've got the nice to meet you bit, and you've got the player name. Now you're going to have to join those two together if you want to say them at the same time. So in order to do that, we use the join block here. And this bit is going to be nice to meet you, nice to meet you, and then in here we put the player name. There we go, and pop that there. So hopefully it will say nice to meet you, and then their player name for 2 seconds. Let's have a look. Let's have a go at that. Scratch Adventure. Walk to scene 3. Hello. And I'll ask for the player's name. What's your name? Bob. Nice to meet you, Bob. Oh, okay. Quick little thing there. So, nice to meet you. Let's add a space bar there after nice to meet you so that it does the full name. Nice to meet you, Bob. Good stuff. Now, that's perfect. Good. Now, the only problem is we come back again. Hello. Yeah, she's a little bit forgetful. Doesn't matter how many times. Whoa, let's just stop that. Doesn't matter how many times we talk to her. She's going to keep asking that same question over and over again. There you go. Hello. Nice to meet you. What's your name? Bob. There we go. So we ask you the question again. If we go back, we talk to her again. She asks you the nice. Keeps asking you the same question. We don't really want to do that. It'd be nice for her to say, you know, something else like, "Oh, nice to see you again," or something. So how do we do that? Well, what we do here is we could do another if, and we can say, okay, you know what? If the player's already set their name, then if the player hasn't set their name, then we'll ask them their name. Otherwise, we'll just say, "Nice to see you again." So this one is going to be an if and an else. There we go. So, how are we going to find out if the player's set their name? Well, let's have a look. At the moment, player Bob, every time I click start, it still sets his name to Bob. It doesn't change it. So what we need to do here is sprite 1 clicked. There we go. What we'll do is, and I'm going to put it on sprite 1 because that's your player, so we might as well put that there. And what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, set at the start of the game, put it right at the top, set the player name to, and then just delete everything in there so it's blank. And the reason we set it as to blank is because then what we could do here is we can say length of, and then player name. There we go. Length of player name. And we could say if the length of the player name is 0, if the length of the player name is 0, we know that she hasn't asked the question. So she can ask the question. And then otherwise, we could just say, "Nice to see you again." Where's the join? There it is. Okay. Nice to see you again. Space. And then whatever the player name is. Good. Good. So hopefully now only one of those two will happen. Let's find out. There you go. So we talked to her the first time. "Hello, what's your name?" "Bob." "Nice to meet you, Bob." And then if you walk to another screen and then come back, "Nice to see you again, Bob." There you go. That's perfect. Brilliant. Good. Excellent. Good. So we got that bit so far. We've got a conversation depending on what's happening. Next bit is let's start to add some inventories. So let's imagine on this screen here we're going to pick up a banana or something. Let's have a look what we're going to pick up something to eat. Cheesy puffs. What we got? Or cookies. Fortune cookies. Oh, muffin. There you go. A muffin. There we go. Good. So, start of the game. Let's move our muffin over to the bottom right-hand corner. When start clicked, go to the bottom right, which is already set. Good stuff. And we do the same thing when we receive change scene. Let's hide. And if, let's have a look. If the scene is 4, if the scene equals 4, there we go. If the scene equals 4, then let's have a look. We will show. So, when I receive change scene, hide. If the scene equals 4, then we'll show. Let's have a look. Let's just check that's working. Good. Talk to her. There we go. Brilliant. And there it is on scene 4. So if the scene equals 4, show. That's fine. Good stuff. And then what we'll do here is we'll wait until touching scratch. Wait until touching scratch. Sprite 1. In fact, what I'll do here is I'll just change info. Let's change his name to Scratch. There we go. Good. Scratch. Let's change his name to Scratch. Wait until touching Scratch. And then what we'll do is, so when we touch Scratch, we want to hide again. And we want to make it disappear so it hides. And we want to give Scratch a muffin. So in order to give him a muffin, what we're going to do is we're going to add the muffin to his, what's known as his inventory. But of course he hasn't got an inventory yet. So what we need to do is let's create a variable. But this time, I'll cancel that. We're not going to create a variable. We're going to create a list. There we go. And this list is going to be Scratch's inventory. Yeah, or his backpack, whatever you want to call it, Scratch's inventory. Now, we can't create it just for Scratch this time, which is why we're using this global variable Scratch's inventory. The reason being is that the muffin, it sounds a bit odd, but the muffin's got to put itself into Scratch's inventory, into its list, and Scratch has got to be able to access it as well. And a lot of other things might need to access it, depending on what your game's doing. So if another player wants to eat the muffin and Scratch wants to give them the muffin, then it needs to know in the inventory that it's there. So we need a global inventory. So it's going to be for all the sprites, Scratch's inventory, and it's an empty list. And what we'll do is operators. Here we go. And let's add, let's call it muffin. Add a muffin to, wait until touching. Once it's touching, add muffin to Scratch inventory, and we will hide. That's okay. Excellent. Good stuff. So let's have a look. In fact, Scratch's inventory here, we also want to make sure that at the start of the game we delete everything out of the inventory. So at the start of the game, delete everything from Scratch's inventory, so he starts with an empty inventory again. So let's have a look. In fact, let's just get rid of player name. Let's hide the scene. Let's hide the back direction. Let's hide that because we don't need those. So we just got the Scratch inventory, because we're testing that for the moment. So let's have a look. We get to Scratch War. There we go. Walk across there. Go past Abby. Hello, Abby. And there you go. The muffin's been hidden, and the muffin is in Scratch's inventory, which is great. Perfect. Now, if you remember from my tutorial game here, whenever you collected the muffin or anything else you want to collect, it appears here at the top in your inventory. Now, the way I'm going to do it is a nice simple inventory. It's just going to have maybe 5 or 6 items that you can collect along the way, and each item will appear at the top there. So how do we do it? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to add another muffin. Might want to rename this inventory muffin, because it's the muffin that goes in your inventory. There it is. And because it's in your inventory, we can make it a bit smaller, and we'll put it up there. Good stuff. Which is okay. And also, because it's in the inventory, I don't want it to stick out as much like that. So let's just make it a nice grey colour. Let's just do a grey muffin. Let's colour it grey. Oops. Does that look right? No, that's no good. Might have to do two-tone grey. Let's have a look. Let's just go grey, grey, and then we'll do the other bits in a darker grey. There you go. So we've got a little inventory, a little muffin inventory at the top there. Good, perfect. So this one, here we go. All we need to do with this one is when start clicked, and you can do this with any of the ones in the inventory. There we go. Let's have a look. Good. Data. When start clicked, what we'll do is we'll hide, because at the start of the level, at the start of the game, you're not there in the inventory, so we'll hide it. And then we'll do in a loop, nice little loop, forever loop. Good. And here, now we've got a list, we've got all these things we can do with a list. Let's say, where is it? There it is. If Scratch's inventory contains, and let's just put muffin. If his inventory contains the muffin, then we will show. Otherwise, hide. Good, that's good, and that's okay. To stop it from using up all the game resources as well, we'll just set that so that it only updates 5 times a second. You could change that to even less actually if you wanted to, but there you go. So let's have a look. So now, hopefully, it says hello to Javi. Let's put hello. Bob. Nice to meet you, Bob. Good. And there's my muffin. And there we go. The muffin's in my inventory, so I can use that later in my game if I want to test something. Which is quite useful if you make an adventure game where you've got to go on quests and you've got to find an item from somewhere. There you go. And nice to see you again, Bob. And there we go. Good. In fact, let's go to that list and we'll just hide the inventory for there because it appears there. Okay. So that's the tutorial over for today. And there's a start to an adventure game. Where you take it from there is entirely up to you. You could have set up some kind of battle mode. You can have something where you go off and find different items, talk to loads of different people. What I'd like to know is, and put it in the comments of the YouTube, is what else would you like me to do with this game? This is just going to be part 1, so we'll just call this adventure game. Scratch adventure game part 1. So this is part 1 of the tutorial. If you'd like me to do another part of the tutorial where it shows you how to do other things to add to your game, once you've completed it, if you get stuck on something, if you want a little hint, then just drop me a comment in the YouTube link, and once I've got enough comments, I will do a part 2 and add more bits and bats. Okay, thank you very much.